Hello and welcome back to Visiting Dugout. I'm Chrystal O'Keefe, the managing editor, writer, podcaster, everything at Southside Sox. And today I have Kevin O'Brien back to chat about the Royals. He is my favorite Royals correspondent. Kevin, please reintroduce yourself.
Hi, Crystal. Thanks for having me on. I cover the Royals now at Royals Keep, so part of the Diamond Centric Network. So I moved from Royals Reporter to Royals Keep this past October, and then you can also find my work as well at Pitcher List and Just Baseball. And I've also began a podcast with the KC Sports Network with Jared Perkins, the Royals Pipeline, which we cover Royals prospects. So anything Royals, I pretty much cover, but I also cover it as well into fantasy baseball as well for those that are into that. And I'm just excited for another season of American League Central baseball because I know it's not really nobody really cares outside the Midwest. It seems about it, but you know that you and I do care about it.
It's true. And there's like a three-way tie right now for second place, which is just bonkers how these teams are already kind of at each other's throats. So, with that, what's new with the Royals this season?
So the Royals are off to a 4-5 start, which feels very similar to what they did last year and even the year before. So this is manager Matt Quachero's fourth year as manager, as well as JJ Piccolo's fourth year as president of baseball operations. He took over for Dayton Moore at the conclusion of the 2022 season. Expectations are a lot higher. The Royals won 82 games last year. That is only the second winning season for the Royals since they won the World Series in 2015. So, on one end, you got to be happy that the Royals are producing winning seasons because it's really not something that's in their DNA in the post Ewing Kauffman era. But it kind of felt a little bit of a disappointment in 2025. The Royals won 86 games in 2024. They made the American League Division Series. They lost in 4 games to the New York Yankees. They beat the Baltimore Orioles in the AL wild card. So to win 82 games felt like a bit of a disappointment, especially since they returned so many key players with Bobby Witt Jr. and Vinnie Pasquantino and Salvador Perez, Michael Garcia, who's come back this year. So the expectations are high again. We saw last year, Michael Garcia had a breakout season, won his first Gold Glove, made the All Star team for the first time, and then was MVP of the World Baseball Classic for Team Venezuela. So there's a lot of high hopes with him. The Royals kind of were a little on the conservative end for free agency and trades. They traded for Matt Stram from the Philadelphia Phillies to help iron out their bullpen, and they also acquired Isaac Collins and Nick Mears from the Milwaukee Brewers for Angel Zerpa. And so Isaac Collins has had a nice start to the year. So has Nick Mears. So obviously those moves have paid off. They also kind of filled out with a couple fourth outfielder types with Lane Thomas, formerly of the Guardians and the Nationals, as well as Starling Marte, who was once with the Diamondbacks as well as the Mets. So there was talk about them acquiring a big name. Brendan Donovan, Jaron Duran were popular names floated out, but no deals were able to be made. And so the Royals decided to run it back while kind of be doing some on the margins deals to kind of help round out their roster. So right now they're kind of hovering around 500. They played the Braves and the Brewers, who are probably two playoff teams, and the Twins, who probably aren't a playoff team. So this is an interesting week with both division foes, with the Guardians starting tonight and then the White Sox for a 4 game series. And the White Sox are doing pretty well. Just they have swept the defending AL pennant winners, so this might not be a typical Royals White Sox matchup as we have seen the past couple of years.
It's true, although to give some credit, it was Easter weekend and it is the Pope's team. So I don't know if like divine intervention was at play there. But yeah, that was an interesting series to watch all of. I couldn't believe my eyes. I want to circle back because you mentioned World Baseball Classic. You had several players that were on different teams. I feel like Vinny kind of stole the hearts of the world because they're on such a big stage for this. So your normal baseball viewers in the States know who Vinny is, but I don't think see that personality because, unless their team is playing the Royals constantly, you don't see as much of him. And he came out in Team Italy and was just the most like charming, fun player that you could watch. I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this guy. It sucks that he's a Royal. But I was like, he's so funny. He's amazing. And all of these really awesome players were on display for the Royals. So how does that feel? You've got one player winning, one player just being so funny and charming. Like, how is that feeling as a Royals fan to have that highlight of these players?
I think it's really fun. I mean, as a Royals fan, it's we've had good players in the past, but they've often not stayed. You had Carlos Beltran for a little bit, and he left. Johnny Damon, Jermaine Dye, guys who had great success with the Royals and found success elsewhere. Zach Greinke, another one. So it's nice to see that the Royals are having these players that are getting national spotlight, but most importantly, ones that are going to be there for a long time. Bobby Witt Jr. and Michael Garcia are signed through 2030. Vinnie Pasquantino signed a 2-year extension. Jack Caglione, who was on Team Italy and
Yeah.
chugging espresso shots with his fellow brethren, he's a rookie, and so he has a lot of years of team control. And then you also have on Team Venezuela, you have a franchise icon like Salvador Perez, who signed a 2-year extension this past season, and Luinder Avila, who really stepped up and looked like he could be a reliever of the future for the Royals, maybe a possible closer as soon as this year. It was nice to see that. It was nice to see the Royals get some recognition. We're lucky to have I think, a great fan base that supports the team, and I think sometimes as a Kansas City baseball fan, sometimes we can be a little bit um, overprotective of our players. I think is a nice way to say it,
Yeah.
it's a great group to cheer for. Just this past weekend, we played in a monsoon against Minnesota on Wednesday, and they must have used 1,000 bags of dirt for the field. And Jack Caglione apparently got a donut order for all the groundskeeper,
Oh,
and was able to get like individual donuts for the groundspeople. And again, that's a rookie. I mean,
yeah.
that's not like he's some franchise player who's been doing this for 30 years and he's doing that. And that's the kind of stuff that makes you feel like, wow, it's really great to be a fan of this team, because you just have a lot of good dudes who do a lot of good things for the community and for the team, and it's really easy to cheer for them. And I'm glad that the World Baseball Classic kind of showcased that.
Yeah, they were all so much fun. Sorry, that was totally unprompted, but it just reminded me 'cause the whole time I'm watching a lot, I mean, a ton of these players, but especially Vinny. Vinny was just a blast throughout that series. I was so bummed that Italy couldn't make it any further because they were kind of who I was pulling for most of it. But yeah. So aside from that, let's kind of jump ahead. Are you feeling confident about this 2022 2026 season? Woo. Because you mentioned, 82 games and it seemed like you guys were going to go further than you probably should have. Do you feel like it's going to be better this year?
I think the logical Royals fan in me says yes. I mean, you look at a lot of things, and a lot of things are trending in the right direction. I believe Pacoda had us as winning about 83, 84 games in their preseason predictions. And this is like Pacoda has typically not really been a big fan of the Royals in terms of their makeup. And
Hmm.
so it sounds like they're kind of, they're getting the right pieces, and it seems like projection wise they should be okay. You have a good core of veterans and young players with not just Jack Caglione, but also Carter Jensen. As long as he can get the sleep schedule stuff figured out, he's a very talented individual, and he had a very good game on Saturday after that whole hoopla. So so there's a really good core talent, and then the rotation is very deep. I mean, you have Seth Lugo, who was a Cy Young runner-up 2 years ago, Michael Waka, who's just an ageless vet who just seems to produce quality starts regardless of his fastball velocity. You have Cole Reagans, if healthy, can be another Cy Young candidate. And then you have some young starters like Chris Bubich and Noah Cameron, who show a lot of potential. And Noah Cameron was fourth in the AL Rookie of the Year. Chris Bubich made his first All Star team last year. So there's a lot of pieces in play. But again, I think it's, as Royals fans, I think sometimes we're just so used to the losing and so used to like, oh, the bottom is going to drop off at any second. And this kind of first week of play with their first 9 games, I think there's some Royals fans that are showing a little concern. As a rational one, you try to say, hey, it's only 9 games. If this 9 games happens in the middle of the season, people don't talk about it. It's my friend David Lesky always talks about. But at the end of the day, it's like you wish this team would get off to a hot start just to kind of build that positive momentum. And they really haven't had that. But I think there's still a lot of ways to go. I think we're going to start to see some guys start to develop and get over the cold starts. Bobby Witt has had a really slow start to the year. His OPS is under 600. It's not going to be under 600 for the remainder of the year. So I think there's some things to really keep in mind. Also, the Royals have done a good job of changing their hitting philosophy. They hired Connor Dawson from the Milwaukee Brewers and former White Sox hitting coach Marcus Timms.
Yeah.
You take our pitching coach, we take your hitting coach. So I guess it's all good. But it's they've kind of really prioritized swing decisions and plate discipline, and it should show that the Royals have the second lowest chase rate for hitters through the first 9 games. So obviously, like those are some of the skills and the practices that we wanted to see. And so I think even though the record is not what we want, I think the processes are in there to have a better overall season.
Well, we will take a quick break to pay bills, and we'll come back and we'll try to figure out what this series is going to look like. Be right back. Okay, welcome back. So we're recording a little early, and as I said to you ahead of recording, White Sox pitching has been weird. They've been using Grant Taylor as an opener, a starter, and then going to somebody else to eat innings. It's been strange. But we don't have probable pitchers up yet. So can you just kind of talk me through what we could expect from Royals pitching for this series?
Yeah, looking at roster resource, I mean, probably the most likely 4 starters for the Royals, and it has been pretty consistent. The Royals have a traditional 5-man rotation. We did have Luinder Avila start on Saturday, but that was because Michael Waka was ill, and so they did not put him on the IL. Michael Waka is starting tonight, so that kind of is so it should be going to a traditional rotation. Looking at it, you're looking at Seth Lugo, Chris Bubich, Michael Walker, Noah Cameron. So the White Sox likely will miss out on Cole Reagans of that bunch. Again, I think when you look at that pitching staff for the Royals, I think you have one that's very command heavy. I mean, these are Royals pitchers that those 4 pitchers can hit their spots.
Mhm.
And they're also ones with diverse pitch repertoires. I mean, Seth Lugo is a pitcher that throws up to 9 pitches. I mean, he has three. He has a curve, a slurve, and then a slow curve. So he's a kind of guy that's almost like an Eddie Seacott of 1919 Chicago White Sox. He just throws a lot of stuff, and it makes it tough for opposing hitters to do anything with it. Noah Cameron is, he doesn't have an elite fastball. If you look at any kind of stuff metric, it tends to rate us below average, but he knows how to locate it. And he also has a really good changeup. Chris Bubich is the same way. He's had 2 starts against the Twins and the Brewers. He's still looking good. I mean, he's took the loss against Milwaukee, but he had 8 strikeouts against the Brewers. So he is looking a lot like his old self. Once he irons out the command, he'll probably be even better. And then Michael Waka, he had a great first start in Atlanta. Didn't get the win because the Royals bullpen blew it. But I think the rotation will be very good. I think the big question mark will be for the Royals bullpen. The bullpen has not been as great this year. They rank about 28th in walks per 9 this year. That's not something very typical. I mean, before they were top 10 in walks per 9 last year. So Carlos Estevez is on the IL. He had a rough spring where his velocity was a lot more down than usual. He's known to be a slow to ramp up kind of reliever, but he didn't get a lot of work this year because of the World Baseball Classic, and he only made 1 appearance with Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic. So he did get hit in the foot, so there was a legitimate injury at play in this outing against Atlanta. But he most likely will not be back for this White Sox series, so the Royals will be depending on Lucas Erceg, Matt Stram, and John Schreiber for their late innings, and maybe Nick Mears, who's looked really good in his first few outings with the Royals.
So you mentioned the bullpen, and I always like to ask what fears you might have heading into this series. Is that sort of bullpen implosion what you're most afraid of, or is there something else that you're seeing that could really compromise winning a series against the White Sox?
I do think it's the bullpen is the biggest fear for my perspective as a Royals fan. The rotation has been fine. I mean, it's they're 12th in ERA and about 19th in walks per nine, but they're eighth in strikeouts per nine. And they faced a very disciplined Brewers team that's known for grinding out at bats and drawing walks. And so even the Twins have been a very good team this year on that end. The Guardians and the White Sox tend to chase a little bit more, so I feel better about the rotation, but when you kind of get in those late innings, it's a little bit of a different ball game. And the Royals bullpen has had traditionally the last couple of years struggles with getting strikeouts. Lucas Urseg had probably about like a 35% K rate when he first came to the Royals, and last year he had a K rate that was under 20%. So that's a big drop, and he hasn't, and it's been around the same as last year too. He's had some walks, so that's a concern. If Lucas Urseg is the closer right now, can he get the strikeouts needed to close out games? Matt Stram had looked good in his first couple outings, but he had a really rough outing yesterday against the Brewers. So Matt Stram doesn't have elite velocity. He's kind of a guy that knows how to locate and known for pitching in big outings. But is Father Time going to catch up with Matt Stram? I mean, with the velocity. And then after Stram and Urseg, there's a lot of wild cards. Steven Cruz has great velocity, but then he had a game against Minnesota where he gave up back-to-back home runs. Nick Mears has some good stuff metrics, but he struggles to generate chase. So there's a lot of flaws with each guy, and when it clicks, you can see it click and it does well. But it's not like last year. As much as Estevez had problems with striking guys out himself, he was just a guy who threw heat. He attacked the strike zone. He kept the ball in play. He kept the ball in the yard, and he got saves. And he saved 42 games. He was the first Royal since Dan Quisenberry to lead the league in saves. And so I think that's a big loss. And again, especially against a team like the White Sox, who have a lot of guys with a lot of big fly potential, that's scary. And you don't want to put free runners on base and then have a guy that's going to hit a 2-run or a 3-run homer to put the game out of reach for the Royals. So I think that's my biggest fear. Because I think offense, I think there's some promising things over this last homestand. The starting pitching, I think there's some promising things, but the bullpen, we haven't seen as much promising things as years past.
So who do you think on this Royals team could be the biggest threat to the White Sox for the series?
I think one of the biggest threats right now is Isaac Collins, and he's been a really interesting player because he's kind of been seen as a lower in the batting order hitter, and he's been batting in the 7, 8, 9 spot or 7 and 8 spot. And he's a kind of a guy that puts the ball in play. He has good plate discipline, and he's done a great job with showcasing some power. He's already had a one home run this year. So I really like what Collins brings. I think he's kind of a guy that gives some length at the bottom of the lineup and can kind of ambush pitchers who might get comfortable after kind of seeing the lineup. So I think Collins is a guy to watch out for. Another guy to watch out for is just Jack Caglione. So I think Caglione, he hasn't hit a home run this year. If you look at kind of his stats, he's got a 115 WRC plus, but he has like a 28% strikeout rate. But all the exit velocity metrics are pretty high. I mean, he's still ranking pretty well in the exit velocity and hard hit rates. His barrel rate's pretty good. He just hasn't been able to hit some home runs. Part of that has been weather conditions at Kauffman Stadium the past week. It hasn't been great. So I also think the White Sox, they have pitchers that can tend to make mistakes that can result in some big flies. I'm thinking of a guy like Jordan Leisure, for example, who can strike out guys but also can give up home runs. And so Caglione, I feel like, is a guy, if the bullpen for the White Sox is not 100% or if their guys are missing, I feel like he's a guy that could take advantage and finally get going in the power department in terms of home runs.
So what do the Royals need to do to take this series? Because, I always joke that the White Sox are terrible, but I do think they are turning into kind of a scrappy, fun team. Obviously, adding Mooney this season was a really great pickup that we managed to pull off. I still don't quite understand that one. But what do the Royals need to do to kind of keep this White Sox team in check and take this series?
So the Royals have had a lot of success against the or the White Royals have had a lot of success against the White Sox the past couple of years. I believe they went 13-1 against them 2 years ago, and I think they went 10-4 against the White Sox last year. So again, they've had a history of success, and I think the biggest reason why the Royals had success against the White Sox was they attacked early on the starting pitching. It's the way the Royals were able to have big innings off starting pitchers right away, and that kind of put games out of reach early. And I think for the Royals to have another season of success against the White Sox, it has to be kind of the same formula. The White Sox pitching, starting pitching right now, if you look at just some of their numbers, they rank 29th in ERA, 29th in WHIP. They can strike out guys. They rank 16th in K per nine, and then the relievers rank 28th in ERA. But the Royals, they show good approach, but when games get kind of tight, it kind of seems like their younger hitters tend to press, and it seems like maybe they take the ball or they pull off on some swings, and it produces pop ups or ground balls. And so I think the Royals, what they need to do is just get off to hot starts. Michael Garcia has been a mainstay at the top of the lineup. If you look, he's basically hitting over 300 right now at the top of the batting order. So um, if he and Bobby, if they can kind of get things going, you kind of feel good about this series because then that way the Royals can kind of put away the White Sox early and will make it tough to come back. But if this game is close, the White Sox have the kind of firepower to like get a big hit or to get those home runs. I mean, they rank eighth in home runs this year. So, the pitchers got to be able to keep the ball in the yard, and the Royals have to be able to get ahead. So that way they're not in a situation where the White Sox are pulling ahead because they're hitting the long ball.
Yeah, this is not the series that I particularly want Bobby Witt Jr. to get hot in.
Yes.
He terrifies me a little as a player. I think he's great. Scares me to death facing him. So we'll move away from our teams before we kind of wrap this up. This is just where I love your hot takes or just kind of what you're seeing or what you want to see this season in baseball. So where are you at as far as 2026 season goes?
When it comes to the 2026 season, I mean, I feel that I do think that the American League Central is one of the more underrated divisions. I think in baseball. I think obviously the Guardians they don't get a lot of love from projections, but they always seem to overperform the projections every year. The Tigers are the Tigers, and the Royals I think are a very fun team as well. And we saw that because of the World Baseball Classic. So I think that the Royals. I think the AL Central will get multiple teams in the playoffs. I don't know who those will be. Obviously, a combination of the Royals or Guardians and Tigers makes the most sense. The Twins have their issues, and I think if Pablo Lopez was healthy, I'd feel better about them. But since he's not, I don't. I feel like this may be a more rebuilding year. But I think the White Sox are going to win more games than people expect as well. I think my hot take in terms of division, I think might be the weakest is I'm not as sold on the American League West this year, and again, I know the Mariners can be kind of a weird team that kind of has ups and downs, and we're seeing that right now. If you look at kind of the standings, the Mariners right now are 4-6, the Rangers are 4-5, and we're seeing the Angels that are 5-5, and so I think that the Angels, you're going to see a little bit of a step up from them this year. The Athletics are always a weird team just because they play at that AAA park that just produces so many home runs. As somebody from Sacramento, I know that I hope that park can produce a lot of home runs because I've seen it from a AAA perspective. So, and then I don't feel like even the Astros. I feel like the Astros has seen some regression. So I don't. I'm not as big a fan of the American League West, and so I see that as a one team one team playoff berth team, I guess you could say. So that's kind of my hot take in terms of like I'm not in love with the American League West this year. And also another hot take too is that I think that my biggest concerns was with the Giants with Tony Vitello as manager. I definitely think this is a one and done year. Not because I don't think the Giants are going to fire him, but I do think Tony Vitello probably bit off more than he can chew. And we're only 10 games in. And that guy has seemed like he has just done at least like a year's worth of newsworthy stories. And the reality is the Giants are that fan base is very impatient, and that fan
Yeah.
base hates the Dodgers. And I grew up as a Giants fan, but I lived in Northern California. My parents are still Giants fans. My family are still Giants fans. This Dodgers dominance is like so like heartbreaking for them. It's not even like wow, this isn't even a rivalry anymore. It's like the Dodgers are just head and shoulders, and I know the Giants are trying to figure that out. And I get why they went with Vitello to say, hey, let's mix something up. Let's get somebody that's against the grain. I just don't think Vitello is that guy to do it. Pat Murphy, for example, was a college guy, but Pat Murphy had experience as a bench coach in Milwaukee, and he got that valuable experience. Vitello hasn't had that,
Hmm.
and I just think that he's overwhelmed. And then I think once the next big college job opens up in the SEC, he's probably going to take it because he's going to say, "I'm going to get paid just as much or just a little bit much. I don't have to deal with all the egos. I don't have to deal with all this media stuff. I can just focus on baseball." So that's my hot take. Is I think he's a one and done, and I see him back in college baseball next year.
As someone who does pay attention to the Giants, they were kind of my team growing, like one of my teams growing up, big like Buster girl, big Tim Lincecum girl. Like they were just my team. So I've always watched them from a distance and I've loathed the Dodgers for that. So I agree wholeheartedly with that take. Honestly, he's not cut out and it's already looking rough and it is as we were recording April 6th. So yeah, I can full send on that take.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things, and I don't, and I think sometimes like managers, it's like, do you have to have MLB experience? You don't.
Mm.
Sometimes that stuff can be very overrated, but there's also a way of like it just doesn't seem like he connects with that clubhouse, and it just
Yeah.
doesn't seem like he connects with major league players, and that's fine. It's just like but you have to be able to connect in some way, and I just don't think he has the experience or he has the personality to do so. And I just think, and there's too much money invested in that team, and there's too much like riding on San Francisco for like him and the Giants to really let this go too long.
I feel like he's got a similar trajectory and you as a Royals fan, very familiar with Pedro Grifol.
Yep.
You know, he was a minor league coach in the Royals system, came on with the White Sox. He did not have that real experience that was needed at kind of that major league baseball level. And then just I've heard I mean, I can't verify any of these stories, but like I've heard horror stories about kind of what that clubhouse was like. And obviously he came in after Tony La Russa, so that it was already just really bad in there. But there was like no player connection. It was just not a good working environment, and then they lost 121 games kind of under his guidance. Obviously, he left before the end of the season was over. Grady Sizemore came in, but it was just so bad that people were like, "Wow, maybe Tony La Russa was right, but we hate Tony La Russa, but maybe maybe he was onto something because he at least got us into like playoff contention, whereas Pedro came in and it was just a disaster. And I think it caused a big divide among like that fan base too. I think people were more like, no, we don't want this. We're checking out. He should not be managing this team. He's awful. So yeah, I feel like that trajectory is very similar. And it's disappointing to see it. It's no matter what, you just kind of want the best for your team, even if you don't have the building blocks that you need. But to see it just under poor management is a huge bummer for anybody.
Yeah, and I think about with Grifol, and I look back on a lot of things, and I remember like sort of being like, oh, that was pretty cool at the time, but then I look back and I was like, well, that was pretty bad. It was kind of like how they had this whole like promotion thing, like with him like going to like schools and him going to like a local Chicago hot dog restaurant, and it was like, is this guy running for like alderman or something like that? Like it was basically like it was like this whole like campaign. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think the problem with Grifol, and I think this has been a problem that plagues the Royals for a little bit, and I think they're getting out of it, is there's almost like this college intensity to like approaching the game, and it's like and you can kind of tell the way he. I think Pedro Grifol would be a great college coach. I
Yeah.
really do. I think if he's around younger guys, if he's around like the college baseball culture, which is more like, hey, like we're going to be doing things this way, or there's more like intensity on these kind of game to game. But when you play 162 games, you're saddled with the best players in the world with multiple languages, multiple different cultures, It's like you have to be like more diplomatic in your leadership, and Grifol hasn't done that. And I think you're kind of seeing that with Vitello, who really has all had his chops in the college ranks. It wasn't like Vitello was like, oh yeah, he was a hitting coach for like the Giants for a little bit, or oh, he was a minor league manager. Like he's only been a college guy.
Hmm.
And I think you're right. I do kind of sense that Pedro Grifol trajectory because you're right. I think Pedro really struggled to connect with guys. I think there was a lot of you had guys that were obviously deflated from years of losing and also years of under Tony La Russa. And I think there's probably headbutting. And I just don't think Grifol either was comfortable. It's one thing to like tell like a 20-year-old, from junior college, like, hey, I need you to step up. It's another thing to say that to Eloy Jimenez,
Yeah.
like to step up. And and yeah, the connection was really sad to see because he was known for that. But again, I think that was also the culture of the Royals was we have this college approach, and didn't necessarily produce the greatest fruit, obviously by all the losing seasons.
Yeah, it was definitely an odd thing when he's like benching players. He's like saying Luis Robert is not hustling, and I was like, well, he was in like he spent most of the season injured. He's sorry he's not hustling. It's weird that you're like benching him and then going on like a press conference after, and he was like, well, he's not hustling at all, so he's gonna sit out and ride the bench for 3 games. And I'm like, that doesn't work in Major League. I mean, you can't. That's just it's not gonna work in this league. And yeah, it was just such a strange thing to kind of watch. Yohan Moncada was another example. Eloy, like he was just weird with those guys, and yeah,
And I
it's
think
a shame.
Yeah, and I think also you're in a manager, you also have to be able to understand how to manage press conferences. And
Yeah,
Grifol was terrible at
it
that.
was bad.
Yeah, and it was just like you're saying too much. You don't need to say this much, and and I think sometimes the good managers are the ones that like kind of give you a lot of blah or a lot of cliches because they know how. Hey, I got 162 games of this, and I think we're kind of seeing with Vitello, it's like he's being way too honest, way too much speaking on his mind. Because I think in college you don't really have to do that many press conferences, or
Right.
you're not on the hot seat as much every day. And so, I do think, and that's what I think I appreciate about Matt Cotrero is that he is very boring in his press conferences. He does say a lot of the same things, but you can tell he has a good clubhouse because it's always the same. And I think, and that's what you need to do to be successful as a major league manager.
Yeah, it was night and day when Grady came on and took over for Pedro because he was very chill and he you could tell he could relate to the players. It like yes, they lost. They lost game, their 121st game technically while Grady was taking over, but they were already there. Like we knew it was going to happen. But he just kind of, you know, took it on the chin and said, "Yeah, this happened, whatever. Tomorrow's another day." And you could tell that the players respected Grady a bit more, which is weird because he's like a young guy, but and it's the same now with Will. Like you can tell with Will Venable, he just he knows what he's doing. He's not going to give you too much information, and the players respect him. And at the end of the day, that's what you need. And I don't see that happening in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I don't think managers have to be devoid of personality, and it's like you have to be able to balance it. I mean, Ozzie Guillen is a great example of a guy who was able to balance it, though sometimes he pushed the envelope too much
Yes.
on some of his things, and which I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, if he did that like nowadays, like oh my, like he probably wouldn't even be on TV anymore. So managers can't have personality, but you also have to have a very player centered approach and be able to protect players. And I think that's what kind of was Grifol's downfall. And it might be Vitello's downfall. I mean, I don't think he's gone to those Grifol levels yet, but it's almost building up because we're 10 games in and it's already like, oh my gosh, he looks overwhelmed. What's it
Yeah.
going to look like game 80? What's it going to look like on game 100? Doesn't look so great.
Well, that's what I've got for you. Thank you, as always, for coming on. It is always wonderful to talk Royals with you. Please just remind people where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you again for having me on, Chrystal. I always enjoy this as well, and enjoy talking with the White Sox audience. Was able to go to my first games at Guaranteed Rate Field last year, and I got to give thumbs up. It was a great baseball experience, both in the stands and around the area. I don't know why people complain about it as
It
much
gets
as
a
they
bad
do.
rap. It's
It
great.
really does. It
Did you
really
eat
does.
anything good?
Well, I went to I thought I love the bigger sliced pizza. That's such an
Yeah.
underrated thing that
Yeah.
a lot of ballparks do. They do like the full pizza, and it's usually like pretty terribly made. But like when you make a whole pizza and you get a slice, it's just a better
Yeah.
quality. So,
Bigger's good.
and I was able to go to 35th Street Red Hots before one of the game.
Yeah.
That's an institution. So, really great, experience, and got to sit in section 108 too. So got the whole 108ing experience and was in the class picture, and so yeah, I always have a soft spot for the White Sox, which I know is weird with us being divisional foes, but
I love Kaufman. I get it. It's fine.
yeah,
We can meet in the middle there.
exactly. So, but yeah, you can find my stuff at royalskeep.com, and my Twitter handle is at crown talk underscore KC, and then you can find me on Blue Sky at Royal Report Kev. At Blue Sky. I think it's dot social. That one's always kind of weird. Yeah,
We'll
Royals
tag you
Report
no matter
Kev.
what.
Yeah, Royal Report Kev dot bsky dot social, and then you can find my stuff at KC Sports Network, where I do the Royals Pipeline podcast as well as the Royals Post Game Live podcast, and then at Pitcher List and Just Baseball. So that's all my stuff. I have a lot out there, but please follow and read and comment when you can.
You're busy like me. I get it. All right. Well,
Yep.
thank you so much.
All
Bye.
right, bye, Chrystal. Thank you.